Hello and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be talking to Cody about his experience being ace, and I'll just let Cody introduce himself.
Yeah, so my name is Cody Daigle Oriens. I'm 45. I live in Hartford, Connecticut in the US. And by day, I run community programs for a nonprofit here. And in my spare time, I make ACE videos for the internet. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
And I guess the reason I wanted to talk to you today is because you're an older ace, and I think that a lot of older aces don't feel as represented in the community. So I think that perspective is really valuable. And also, in a way, your experience is quite similar to my own in terms of your orientation, if I understand correctly. Um, so I just wanted to start with if you could talk briefly about how you discovered asexuality and eventually came out as ace.
Oh yeah, so I'm married. My husband Neil is a bit younger than me, so like I'm Gen X and he's a millennial, and he introduced me to Tumblr.
Mm.
Here, go. Here's a new toy. Go play with that and enjoy yourself on Tumblr. And so in hanging out on Tumblr, I spent a lot of time in kind of like the queer theory side of Tumblr and just like queer Tumblr in general. And when I originally came out at 18, I came out as gay. And that's sort of how I understood myself for pretty much like my entire life. And hanging out on Tumblr, and I'm reading posts about asexuality, which I kind of knew about, but I didn't really have like a deep understanding of it. And in reading these posts, I started to recognize like huge chunks of my like life and experience in them. And it was like, wow, okay, so everything I've experienced in my life actually has there's this other thing that it is. And I I recognized that like my experience wasn't so much as like a broken gay guy, but it was asexuality. That's what I had been like living all this time. So
Mm.
it's like thank you Tumblr.
Yeah, it seems
Yeah.
like a lot of people were introduced to asexuality through Tumblr. Never
Yeah.
used it myself, but it's obviously a very good resource for that sort of thing. And you did mention that you've started doing videos on the internet,
Yeah.
specifically Ace Dad Advice. I was wondering if you could talk a bit about that and like why you wanted to start it. And yeah.
Yeah, so my barber recommended that I download TikTok because he's like it's super fun and you should. So I was like, I don't know. Like TikTok feels like a thing for the kids. And I feel like way too old for that. But I did, and in kind of playing around with TikTok, I made this video that I connected. I announced myself as an asexual person, and I started to get a crazy amount of comments from young people, young ace people, saying, "I never seen an ace person that looked like you. I didn't know ace adults existed. I thought everybody was young. I've never seen someone who looks like you who is ace." And I thought it was really striking. When I was coming up in the gay community, when I first came out, elders and mentors were just incredibly important to me, and we had a lot of older folks who could sort of like help us out and guide us and mentor us. And I thought, well, it's crazy that the ace community maybe doesn't have that. That like, where are those people? So I was like, well, here, I was important to me. I can pay back that way. So I started to make videos. Like my general internet aesthetic is kind of very like a dad because I look the way I do. So, so I started making videos that were ace dad advice. So like thinking like, well, what if I needed an ace mentor, what would I want that ace mentor to say? And
Mm.
it's been like really cool. I've gotten to connect to like a lot of amazing people, and not just young ace people, but other ace folks who are my age and older who um, also had never seen anybody who kind of looked like them, didn't know that our community was also hanging around on like Twitter and TikTok.
Yeah.
So and yeah, it's been a really cool experience.
Yeah, and I think that was the way I was introduced to you as well. Was through your videos popping up on Twitter.
Yeah.
Yeah, some really good content. So definitely, audience, go check that out if you haven't already. Um, but yeah, you mentioned a lot how you came out as gay originally, and you kind of grew up without that knowledge of asexuality because it didn't exist at the time, and the language was it was less well known. And so did you? It seems like you found it more difficult to come to terms with your orientation because of that. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, like I think about, I feel like I was trying to understand myself in the world as like an 18-year-old or a 20-year-old, like in college. I was trying to understand myself in the world without access to the words to describe it. So I was using the wrong language to talk about myself for pretty much like my whole adult life. And because you're right, there wasn't information about asexuality anywhere. I mean, I was like the America Online generation, So there was no Tumblr, there was no Avon. Avon didn't exist until 2001. Yeah. So there was no information for me to find, and there were no ace role models or representation anywhere to sort of connect my life to asexuality. So I had to use the next best thing, and that for me was the gay community. That's where I kind of like most understood myself. But like I said earlier, I've always felt kind of like a broken version of that. Because I didn't quite relate to sex the same way, and I wasn't interested in the same way, and I always felt I've always kind of talked about my experience of like being in the gay community as feeling like an other in a group of others. Like I was supposed to find my people there, but I didn't quite exactly because I didn't quite fit in there either.
Yeah, I think I'm personally a bit hesitant to go to gay spaces and be more active in the gay community because I do feel different. And the people there may not be able to relate to every part of my experience because of my asexuality. So I think it's definitely very valuable having this representation of asexuality out there for people to be able to relate to that and kind of discover themselves and have the language to talk about their orientation. So they don't feel broken.
Agreed.
But I think a lot of aphobic people would argue that asexuality is kind of this trendy internet thing, and you kind of alluded to that earlier with a lot of young people not having anyone who's older to look up to. I guess, is there something you'd say to those aphobic people as someone who grew up without those resources and still felt asexual, even though you didn't have the language to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, like I always feel like anytime someone says, "Oh, that's just trendy," or "That's just like something the kids make up," that's just a convenient excuse to justify being, like in this case, being aphobic. You're just using that as a justification. But yeah, like I can tell you, like I am not I am not 18. And I'm an asexual person, and I was then too. It may look from the outside like the community is mostly young people, but that's just because those people have had access to the information and they had access to an online community. And I think like beyond, for people who are my age, beyond just like us not having access to information, I think we're also not in the same spaces where that information is being shared and talked about. So like there are not a lot of people, I don't know, have a lot of peers who are hanging out on Tumblr or who are hanging out on TikTok either. And like those communities are really vibrant, and they're full of young ace folks having conversations and validating each other. So just because we're not frequenting, that's not happening on Facebook, like yeah, they're not having like deep ace conversations on Facebook. So I think that it may look that way, but we exist. We're just maybe in different spaces. We're in spaces that you may not be inhabiting, and are maybe less inclined to talk about our lives that way because we've probably experienced decades of feeling othered and being disrespected and feeling like we're being marginalized. I don't mind being a loudmouth. That's like fine with me.
I'm very glad that you are, because that will be helpful to a lot of people, as you've probably seen yourself. And it's really just, I think, the fact that the ace community seems so young is just a product of the lack of information and the fact that it's only coming out now. So there's bound to be more people who can identify as ace because the word ace exists.
Well, and I've even experienced that in the time I've been making things. I mean, there are people in my circle who I've like known online before I started making ASTAD stuff, who have come out as asexual because they've been watching my stuff and are like, "Oh crap, that's me," and so and they're my peers, and they're mostly my peers actually. They're people who are kind of in their 30s and 40s and maybe even a little bit older. But yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, it's the not having access to information. As soon as that information becomes available to them, they see themselves and then can identify. My husband jokingly like called me the ace whisperer because I'm always like, it came out. Yeah.
Just converting all your friends.
Right. Exactly.
Changing gears a bit. Like you mentioned a couple of times, you're married to your husband, as one tends to be. And he's allo.
Yes. Very.
Very allo.
He is very allo, yes.
And were you together before you came out?
Yeah, we were together for about 4 years before I came out. So it was like, surprise.
Yeah. And do you think, coming to terms with your asexuality, do you think that's affected your relationship with your husband?
Oh, totally. I mean, before coming out, I mean, sex was a very challenging area of our relationship. It was difficult, and we were both kind of struggling with problems that we were struggling with the wrong problems a lot. You know, like we knew something was going on, but we were attributing it to other things and not like an identity thing that I didn't understand. So it was always very tough, and coming out actually helped us a lot, really, because then we actually understood what the discrepancy in our kind of sexual lives were more clearly, and that helped us develop a better communication and better skills to navigate that, and then like for us to each be able to create like healthy, satisfying sex lives for ourselves in our relationship.
Yeah, and I think kind of it's difficult to solve a problem if you don't know what the problem is.
Yeah. Really.
So yeah, it makes sense that finding out about your asexuality helped you then kind of confront that aspect of your relationship. Cool.
Yeah, and then like also like once I came out, I was just generally more confident and happy with myself. So I was able to show up in our relationship better and as more fully myself, which helped both of us out a lot.
Yeah, and I guess I have one last question. And when I'm doing interviews with people in the media, they tend to ask how my homoromanticism and asexuality can coexist with the hypersexualization that society places on gay men. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, like I mean, I certainly feel like if the gay community was willing, I feel like we could teach them something. You know, I think a lot of times the gay community thinks of itself as very sexually liberated and very sex positive, but I don't always know that that's so true, because I never felt like that in the community, and I think you're like, the hypersexualization is like that's exactly what it is, like that mistaking hypersexualization for liberation or being sex positive. And what asexuality can sort of help teach the community, really, that community, is that like real sex positivity is not just we're having as much sex as possible or encouraging that, but like real sex positivity is wherever you land in relation to sex sort of exist without any moral judgment or negative judgment. That you can certainly have as much sex as you want, but you can also have none, and that's also very valid, and that shouldn't make you question your identity or your validity in a community.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think there could be a lot of allo gay people who may not want sex as much as they have, and they may feel pressured into it, and they may feel pressured to have a certain type of sex, to kind of conform with the rest of the community. So yeah, I think it'd definitely be useful to talk from an ace perspective about that, if they were receptive. Don't know if I've ever tried myself.
I'm in this. I recently was in this community of gay men online, where and they were having a conversation. There was a discussion online about several men expressed that because there were certain sort of sex things they didn't really feel comfortable doing, it made them question their identity as a gay person. And I thought that was really surprising. Like, how rigid do the ideas about what it means to be a good gay person and be a good gay sexual person, how rigid do those roles have to be to make someone question whether or not they're gay because quite fit the things, like being able to kind of remove that rigidity and open that up so that people don't feel that much pressure to conform to norms in a community would make the community like better for everyone.
Yeah, and I think, because especially with asexuality, the difference is very stark in that you're feeling either little to no sexual attraction, but even in that case, you may still want sex for one reason or another. A gay person saying, "Oh, I don't want sex in this particular way, therefore, am I really gay?" is a lot more restrictive than how we're talking about it in the ace community.
Yeah. Yeah, I sort of love the idea that asexual people can teach allo people about sex and make them better at it. Which,
you'd think that ace people aren't very good about talking about sex, but I think we talk about it enough. And from like a distance almost, we have that separation from it. That we're actually pretty good at it.
I agree.
But yeah, I think that's all the planned questions I had for you. One question I do ask for everyone who comes on the channel is, what's your favorite cake?
Red velvet. I'm a Southern boy, so.
Yeah, that was my boyfriend's answer as well. So I'm sure I'll be happy to hear that. We made one when he visited, although the red food coloring wasn't very good, so it was more brown velvet cake. But it tasted nice.
Right, like however you get it is, it's good regardless of the color.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for coming on today and talking to me. It's been really nice to talk to someone, especially someone of a similar orientation to me, because that doesn't happen too often. Is there anything you'd like to plug? Obviously, you've got your Ace Dad Advice.
Yeah, like you can find me on YouTube as Ace Dad Advice, and I'm over there on TikTok as well, and I'm hanging out on Twitter too. So come hang out. Yeah,
I'll put all those links in the description for anyone who wants to check Cody's stuff out. Otherwise, thanks for coming on. And
thank you. This was fun.
If you enjoyed this video, then please leave a like. I post videos every Saturday, so if you want to see more, then feel free to subscribe. That is all I had to say today. Have a wonderful day, and I shall see you next time.